Hi, my name is David Zuckerman. I am the former Lieutenant Governor of Vermont and also was a state legislator for 18 years. And I'm going to tell a story about grassroots organizing and the power that everyday people can have in the political process. And in Vermont, there was an organization called Rural Vermont, who was organizing around trying to put some parameters around the use of GMO seeds in our food production system. And folks had a range of reasons they were concerned about GMOs. Some were concerned around questions around human health. In particular, I was concerned around what it would mean for the agricultural system and the economics for farms, as well as the impacts on neighboring farms that were trying to farm without GMOs and the potentially of cross-pollination. And we had a bill that I introduced and worked on for a number of years called strict liability, which would basically place the economic or environmental harm costs onto the seed company itself that produced the GMO seeds. In this case, often it's Monsanto, but there are others. And the idea being that a farmer who's using GMO seed is often just trying to do the best they can to make a living in a difficult economic field of agriculture, but that the consequences really are not their fault so much as the seed companies that really professed the greatness of these seeds and the use of their chemicals in the process. So we did over a couple of years. I traveled around the state. Rural Vermont worked with their supporters around the state to have local meetings in coffee shops and libraries and different, people's houses around the state to build awareness on the issue and to build a really excellent group of people who are going to be active on the issue when the time would be needed. And after a few years, we did pass a strict liability bill in the Vermont House. And when it went to the Vermont Senate, there seemed to be some delay happening. And the seed manufacturing companies really brought in their lobbyists. The sort of powers that be that were opposed to changing this law or implementing this law started to have a greater effect. And we asked for people to start calling the leadership of the Senate. At that time, the president pro tem is our now Congressman Peter Welch. And at one point, I was walking through the hallway near his office. And it was well known that I was a leader on the GMO issue for quite some time. And he said to me, "Make the calls stop." And one of the reasons that was the case was that his office was getting inundated with phone calls. And as a Democrat, it was hard when people who wanted stronger environmental legislation, stronger economic justice legislation such as this, for a Democrat to be slowing that down because of the other pressures that he and other senators were getting from the lobbyists. And I basically just said to him, "Senator, I will immediately put out the word to stop the calls as long as you commit to having hearings in your agriculture committee on this topic," because at that point, they wouldn't even schedule hearings to look at the House passed bill. And my thought was, if we had a chance to have the testimony and we had a chance to get more into the media about this hearing, then that would continue to build momentum for the bill to move eventually. And Vermont Senator Peter Welch said to me, "You'll get your hearing, tell the calls to stop." So I put out word to Rural Vermont that I had secured a commitment from the president pro tem that he would get the Agriculture Committee and the Judiciary Committees to look at this legislation. And what was remarkable was when we put out the word to stop calling, the calls stopped. Now, many folks would say the most powerful thing you can do is make calls happen. I will tell you that as a fellow policymaker, amongst others, if you then put out the word that you will stop the calls and the calls also stop, the amount of political credibility and capital that creates for a policymaker is tremendous. And the reason that's important is that within the halls of policymaking, one's credibility, one's clout, one's ability to get things done is based on a number of factors. One is your integrity and whether you're always honest with your colleagues. Another is whether or not they feel like you have any influence within their constituency, which is usually not your own. And when policymakers from across the state were learning that they had constituents that supported this legislation who would pretty much start the calls or stop the calls based on my recommendation, it made a big difference in terms of the senator's level of respect for what was then a House member from Burlington. And so I tell this story because it is so important for people to recognize that phone calls can make a difference, that constituent communication can make a difference.